Hello,
Hi, everyone.
welcome.
Who's going first?
Do we need to change any of the settings, or is this okay to go?
I think we're okay.
I think this is okay. You might want to do it so that you can only see the three speakers, so that we don't have a GDPR issue with people's names.
Right. How do you do that? Speaker view?
Speaker view, yes, it'll pop onto whichever one of us is speaking. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Great. Hello, everybody. First up, I'm Claire Snowden-Darling, founder of Balance Wellness and the co-founder of the College of Functional Wellness, alongside my cohort.
Duh. That's me, the other half.
Laura Knowles, and we are delighted to be here with the ever so wonderful Emily Perry.
Hi, everyone. I know some of you on the call today, but I've worked in HR for the last 20 years nearly, which is absolutely terrifying. But yeah, I am an HR director currently. I've worked in HR for a very long time. And yeah, so we're going to talk today about what HR are currently dealing with and what we have been dealing with for the last year. I think I read something the other day that 70% of HR professionals said that 2020 was the most stressful year of their careers. And I would agree with that. And I don't think things are easing up anytime soon. So having been through sort of a wellness journey myself, it's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And I had a chat with Claire and Laura because I've worked with Claire and Laura for a really long time now, and they've really helped me in terms of my own personal wellness and mental health stuff that I've had in the past and continue to work on every single day. And I just felt that in the world of HR, we have so much put on our plate. So we are expected to be the kind of hirers, the firers, the ones with all the answers on so many different things. And I've really noticed that recently, over the last couple of years, wellness and well-being and mental health is another thing that we've kind of had added to our list of things to do. And I don't know about everyone else, but certainly when I was doing my CIPD training, which is kind of seen as the holy grail in HR, we didn't learn anything about well-being. We didn't learn anything about mental health and okay, at that time, nearly 20 years ago, it wasn't such a well-spoken about thing as it is now. However, I don't really see much education coming from these official sources around well-being other than put in a EAP, so an employee helpline, have a few coffee mornings around mental health, and let's have quite a fluffy approach to mental health and well-being in our businesses without actually equipping HR people with the proper tools and education to really help people. And I know that through my own learning, through working with Laura and working with Claire, I've gone on to be able to really develop my toolkit in this area, but I know that that isn't the case for lots of other people. So I thought that by doing this talk today, we can kind of go through some of the issues that I know I'm seeing at the moment in the world of HR, and then hear from Claire and Laura about some real practical things that we can be doing, so we can be educating ourselves on, and other sort of areas that we can be looking into to really help the people within our organizations. So yeah, does that work for both of you?
Yeah, it does. And I was just really interested when you were talking because so I started Balance Wellness in 2008, and quite quickly, because my family ran another business, I knew that there was a workplace wellness issue, and that, working with HR was one thing, but actually my experience was that that HR would often, you know, it would be, we'll give a bit of education and we'll hope that that helps the staff. And it might be that, you know, Laura and I over the years have worked with some really big names in terms of like, if you can come in and do a stress talk and give some practical tips, then HR get to tick the box of we've covered stress, we've talked about diet, we've even paid for some one-to-ones with a nutritionist to make sure that people are showing up. So we can push it back on self-responsibility and that job's done. But I think the change that I've noticed and in the last year with the pandemic is I'm seeing HR managers come into my clinic going exactly those words. I am not equipped to deal with this. I've got staff members coming in with rope burns around their neck where they've tried to commit suicide. And now it's not about the self-responsibility so much of the staff members. It's about this fluffiness that you were talking about is no longer working. And so, and also just, you know, the ridiculous amount of stress I've seen of HR managers having to, HR directors having to, you know, get their team in place to make 400 people redundant and work, you know, incredibly long hours, stressful hours, having all of that to deal with to at the end make themselves redundant. So it's not just about we're not equipped to deal with what we're seeing happening in the workplace. We're also having no time to process and deal with what's actually going on for us.
100%. And I think back to kind of 2020 when kind of we were hearing of COVID, you know, it was starting to come through. And I vividly remember the day we went into lockdown because I was watching the Boris announcement along with everyone else in the country, and literally my phone was blowing up with everyone in my business contacting me going, Emily, what do we do? And I was like, guys, I'm watching the same thing as you. I don't know, like, what is this furlough thing? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? What do we do if someone gets COVID? And I was like, I don't know. I'm literally watching the same stuff as you. So I just think that over the last year in particular, it's really brought to the forefront, like how, you know, how much we take on in terms of what we do within a business, and actually how we don't have the tools quite often to be able to process that amount of stuff that people are bringing to us on a daily basis. And I know that this was something that I really struggled with in the past, was having boundaries with people. And I would, you know, I would want to rush in and, you know, make everyone okay. And we can't physically do that. And I just think that the longer sort of the COVID thing has gone on for and will continue to do so, and the more we're talking about this well-being crisis that's going on in the world, more and more people are evidently really, really struggling at the moment. And we have to go beyond having a tick box approach to well-being and to, you know, mental health. I cannot bear it when I see people talking about mental health and just thinking that having these real tick box things in place will help, because I guarantee you, as somebody who used to suffer panic attacks at work in an HR consultancy, the last person I was going to go and talk to was my boss, who was apparently an HR expert. So that kind of says it all to me, really. And I just think we have a responsibility to educate ourselves, but to also take responsibility for our own well-being as well. So we can do the appropriate stuff to make sure that we are going into work our best selves and we are not burnt out, because as I have learned on many occasions, you cannot serve people when you are completely burnt out yourself.
It's interesting when you talked about you know, the day that we went into lockdown and everyone looking at everyone going, what is this furlough and what is this thing? And the repeated theme that Laura and I have talked about over the past year is, it's like, where are the grown-ups? Yeah. Where are the grown-ups running the country? Who's going to tell me what to do, how to do it? And in the business situation, in the corporate world, that, like you say, everyone's looking to HR going, well, what do we do? Because what if people get ill? And you're going, I don't know. And then you're looking at the, you know, the rest of the management team or shareholders going, well, what do we do? And they're going, well, we don't know. And that just seems to be like this microcosm of the macrocosm of what's happening globally, is this, we don't know what to do. Which is actually where Laura and I come in, because we've spent our whole careers enabling people to know what to do. mentally and physically, and it's an area that we're incredibly passionate about. So yeah, this is kind of why we were talking with you, Emily, wasn't it? Because whilst previously we've spent our time doing talks for employees on what is stress and how can you identify your stress and what to do about it, actually it's become much more important to be supporting HR managers, directors, to actually be the ones going, I know what to do. I know what to do for me.
Yeah.
And then I know how to advise and facilitate the staff members who are looking to me like, you know, rabbits in headlights.
100%.
So I imagine what you're seeing a lot of is stress, anxiety, not being able to cope. And I think what is interesting about that is that stress and anxiety is often quite misunderstood. And this is an area that Claire and I work a lot with. And Claire touched on it when she said, we need to look at the physical and the emotional side of stress and anxiety, because often stress and anxiety can come from an imbalanced diet. It can come from exercise at the wrong time of day or no exercise. It can come from not eating the right nutrients. So we need to be looking at the physical side as well as looking at the emotional side. This is something that we see a lot in our clinics, is if someone is eating a lot of processed foods, drinking a lot of like Diet Coke, for example, or energy drinks, that is going to have a knock-on effect with the adrenal glands, which produce our adrenaline and cortisol, which we know in stress and anxiety is the key hormones and neurotransmitters that we produce when we're stressed. We need to be looking at, if we're eating a lot of sugary foods, that is going to be increasing those stress hormones. And so it's really difficult to be working with staff members who are very stressed and anxious if they're not looking after themselves. And they're looking to the HR team for, you know, I need relief from this, but they're not taking responsibility for what they're doing to be able to affect that.
And the HR managers don't
Claire's gone quiet.
I know, and she was about to make a really good point that, and I think I know what she was going to say, that HR managers don't have this information.
No.
And so in this, when all these staff
responsibility can often be the get out clause, but actually how do we create sort of structure?
We lost her. the
Oh,
joy
you're
of
back.
technology. Say that again, Claire.
Unmute. I have no idea what happened there. Where did I get to? Where did you get to?
So I think you were about to say that HR managers are not trained in this.
No, and they're not trained in this, and it's not necessarily become a KPI in the business. And as you were speaking, what I could feel was, it's like people go, yeah, diet, yeah, we know, yeah, we shouldn't eat sugar, yeah, right. But it's, whilst we might know we're not supposed to eat sugar and we're supposed to go to bed before 2 a.m. and maybe not stay up all night gaming and drinking energy drinks, people don't necessarily really understand the massive ramifications on their body. Because we can talk about cortisol and we can talk about stress and people go, don't care. There's this massive disconnect between what I'm putting in my mouth and what's actually physiologically happening in my body. And one of my favorite aha moments was when we did some training a long time ago now, where we discovered that in people who have anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, there is a higher level of something called endotoxins in the blood. Now, endotoxins are created by the bacteria in our gut in response to sugar and processed foods and refined carbohydrates. So there is a direct correlation between we eat this food, the bacteria give off these endotoxins, the endotoxins get absorbed into the bloodstream, and a higher number of these endotoxins relate to anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts. So we have this science now, and I'm going to be honest, nutritional science up until about 10 years ago was a bit of a misnomer, wasn't it, Laura? It's a really burgeoning science, but we now have this data. So how do we start to enable HR managers to make this data part of the core functioning of a business, and therefore part of the responsibility of the staff members if they are experiencing those conditions? Because if they're not experiencing those conditions, go and eat all the Doritos you want. But if you are experiencing those conditions and it's affecting your work and you're not able to come in, but you're still expecting to get sick pay and keep your job, how does that actually become, an important KPI? I think these are really big questions that we're not going to solve on this Zoom call. What we can do is bring the awareness to actually what the issues are. But I think this is an exciting place for HR to move into, because it's this real change that we'll see in terms of putting wellness front and center. Because, sending around little talks on just mind your stress and don't have emails after 6 p.m. isn't going to cut it.
And and I find it so patronizing actually when that happens. And I guess what I find really interesting and exciting actually is over the last 10 years or 15 years or however, HR, we've had a lot of battering about our value in business, and we've been constantly told that we have to step up and we have to add value. The amount of times I've been told, how are you adding value to this organization? And do you know what? I had an argument with one of our directors around this, because he would kind of make comments around fluffiness around well-being, and my argument was, you cannot expect people to perform to the levels that you want them to perform if they are not well. Now, that doesn't always mean it's stress and anxiety. If you're not sleeping, you're not going to be able to perform to the best of your ability. If you're dehydrated, you're not going to be able to perform to the best of your ability. There are so many things that make up well-being. And actually, like Claire said, it's not about being fluffy and tick boxy about this. It's actually holding people to account over their well-being. And yes, we can help and support them, but fundamentally, we are all adults. And I think one of the things that HR has done previously in the past is we have become the caretakers of the business. Nothing grinds my gears more than when people call HR mums. Oh, go speak to HR, they're the mums. And it's like, there's no wonder we've been expected to kind of prove ourselves where we're adding value. And I really think that with well-being, we need to be showing up here and taking the lead on this. But by doing that, we have to educate ourselves first. We have to do further education. We have to go and learn about this stuff so that we see well-being as being more than somebody coming to have a chat to you about being anxious, and the first thing you do is you put in an employee helpline and you put a few first aid mental health first aiders in place. It's so much more than that. And I think it's really important, like Claire and Laura both saying, is that it's about so many different things, well-being. And yes, we cannot be experts in all of that, but we can educate ourselves where to find that information and where the experts are in that field as well.
And you know what? Mums do make you eat your greens.
Yeah, it's true.
So you want me to be mum? I'll be mum.
Yeah.
You're grounded right now. But yeah, I really hear that. It gives me goosebumps actually, because like part of our big mission is to change the health of humanity. It's quite a big vision. But actually, when corporate can start to take on this accountability model, if you're providing the education and the opportunity for staff to access some good support, then if you can start to apply accountability models to people's KPIs, I think that's actually where the world's health changes. That's how we, like, from my perspective, that's how we start dealing with the global health crisis, because people are actually going to have to take care of themselves to be employed, as it should be.
Oh, exciting. Do you think businesses are going to actually take this on? Because well-being often seems like an add-on of something that is a nice to have, but is not a core part of the business.
I think we're going to have to. I don't think we're going to have a choice, to be perfectly honest with you. I think if this pandemic has taught us anything, it is that health, without our health, we cannot do anything. So it's all very well and good saying that well-being should be a nice little add-on, and let's kind of talk about it on our social media to make ourselves look good. But fundamentally, if we've got a load of sick people in our businesses are not going to perform. It's quite straightforward. And I think that COVID and all the stuff that's now coming out of this crisis is going to really make organizations sit up and go, hang on a second. Yes, these people's health is not our personal responsibility to sort out, but actually we need healthy people in our business. We need people that can perform, and sick people can't perform. It's quite straightforward.
It's quite straightforward. Yeah, I do find that really exciting. I was just thinking that it might be really useful for us to actually cover what stress is as like a basic 101 and what causes it. I have a real issue with the word stress because it's become so overused. It's like a word that we don't even hear anymore. Stress, because everyone's stressed. Everyone's stressed from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, and in our sleep. Like, everyone is stressed. I know when we were training, we used to call the issue that's happening with the global health crisis that, you know, humans are little frogs boiling to death, because if you take a frog and you try and put it in hot water, it'll jump out. I don't suggest anyone does this, it's cruel to frogs. But if you put a frog in cold water and you slowly heat up the pan, the frog won't realize that it's boiling to death. And that's exactly what is happening with our bodies. So what stress is in the body is basically, as Laura was saying, it's an imbalance of stress hormones. So it's when the body thinks that there is a saber-toothed tiger behind us and it wants to run away from it. The problem is there are no saber-toothed tigers anymore, and that was quite a one-off experience. So in the case of the saber-toothed tiger, the body sort of goes, oh, senses danger from a variety of different places, you know, from our senses, pretty much, but it can also sense danger from within. So I'm going to get to that in a moment. And the body goes, right, quick, okay, danger, produce adrenaline. And then adrenaline says, now we need to produce cortisol. And cortisol is a hormone that puts sugar into our body, into our bloodstream and our muscles, so that we can run away. It's a very simple primal process. And that should be great and groovy, because we get away from a saber-toothed tiger and we go and hide behind a big rock and we go, phew, all right, cool, I'm going to sit here, have a little snooze, get rid of all that adrenaline and cortisol. Except in today's world, if I translate into today's world, the alarm clock goes off, adrenaline hit. I'm going to get up because my kids are shouting, adrenaline hit. Cortisol now being produced. Okay, now go and get a coffee so I can drag myself through the day, more adrenaline. The kids are shouting at me, no one's getting dressed, I'm having an argument, get in the car, drive to work, emails. We are literally followed by saber-toothed tigers all day, every day. So we are in this massive amount of adrenaline and cortisol. Now, when that happens, a couple of things occur. Firstly, not only do we have loads and loads of cortisol, after a while, cortisol, we know the word cortisol or cortisone because people think of it as being anti-inflammatory, and it is in small amounts. In big amounts, it becomes very inflammatory. Now, the root cause of every illness in the human body is inflammation. That is fundamentally any disease, the root cause is inflammation. Absolutely. And so it's this inflammation that is now predominantly being caused by this cortisol overwhelm. So what causes that other than the external stuff? Well, it can come from a variety of places. So we like to talk about the B's. So the biochemical is the B, and biochemical is what I'm putting in my mouth and what I'm exposed to externally, that's biochemical. So what I'm putting in my mouth can make me have a cortisol response. Now that would be our refined sugars, our energy drinks, our caffeines. It would also be foods that we're intolerant to that might feel a little bit more shady that people don't really know or know about. But actually, when you start looking at the bigger picture of how we have started aggressively farming and all of the pesticides and the pollution that we are surrounded by, those persistent organic pollutants, POPs, are huge causes of inflammation in the body. So we have that to deal with. Then you start looking at your nice skincare or your lovely perfume. Those, again, toxic chemicals actually start to cause cortisol buildups in the body. That's before you even sit down and have to deal with 400 emails. So your body is already going through a cortisol response. Now, you know, we get people in the clinic who have become really unwell, and I'm not saying that's the case in your staff members, but you know, the first thing we do is review, okay, what's going on biochemically? We then look at the second in the B's, emotional, what's going on emotionally? Okay, you're stressed. You're actually, you know, stressed with work or stressed with home life. Okay, let's unpick that. We look at electrical, because we're attached to these gadgets all day, every day. And so that in itself is causing us to have this cortisol response. And we know it, you know, you can be holding that phone and don't you feel drained after a while? Like you can feel that massive pull down on your body. It's too much. Humans are supposed to be out in, you know, the daylight and fresh air and all those kind of things. And then we come around to the S in B's, which is structural. And just being sedentary and sitting in a desk all day will put high levels of pressure on the body in ways it shouldn't have. And that in turn will actually make things like there are valves in the bowel that will become imbalanced, and that will start to cause things like irritable bowel syndrome. So this is what stress does in the body, and that's before we have the impact with the, you know, the mental health issues. But you can start to see how this picture with the diet, with all the other things, with the stress, starts to build up a huge mental health issue and anxiety. Laura, do you want to talk about the blood sugar roller coaster and anxiety?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the big things that we see in the clinic, so we see women with hormone issues or people with irritable bowel syndrome, for example, and they rarely make the connection between the stress hormones, the adrenaline and the cortisol. They rarely make that connection between these kind of symptoms and stress. But when we look at high levels of cortisol in the body, what that does from a hormone perspective, so we have some key sex hormones that we produce. Most of us have heard of estrogen, for example, and we also have progesterone. Now, there is a pathway that happens in the body where the body prioritizes cortisol over progesterone. So this is where we start to see, if there's a lot of cortisol in the body, we're starting to see hormone problems. We're starting to see really painful periods. We're starting to see PCOS. We're starting to see horrendous menopauses, which are causes for women to be taking time off work. Yeah. And so then we look at the impact of stress in the digestive system. So there are two sides of our nervous system. We've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is our get up and go, which is where we're producing our adrenaline and cortisol. And then we've got the lovely parasympathetic, which is meant to be our rest and digest, which is where we're meant to, at the end of the day, take it easy. And so what we see is corporate high flyers who are working all day, and then they're going to the gym in the evening when they should be having their lovely parasympathetic nervous system response. So they are producing cortisol at the wrong end of the day. And so you're not getting this opportunity for the digestion to come online and to do what it needs to do, because we're never going into that parasympathetic response. So this is why we see a lot of digestive conditions connected to stress. And then if we take that whole picture of hormones, blood sugars, stress hormones, we see a knock-on effect with the immune system. A big part of our work, we see the immune system as a victim. It's often it's like the canary in the coal mine. It's when there is a lot of stress and inflammation in the body, it's usually the immune system that switches on that light that goes, I'm really struggling here. So when we see conditions like autoimmune or frequent infections, having to be off work with colds and flus on a repeated basis, we are always interested in what's going on underneath that, what's going on with the digestive system, what is the stress hormones doing, what's going on with the sex hormones, because that gives us a real understanding of why the immune system is doing what it's doing.
Yeah, and just picking up on that as well, I think the HR people in the world are going to be seeing a huge amount of long COVID, and long COVID is basically everything that Laura and I have just described. It's just, instead of going into an autoimmune response, the body's just gone into this kind of like overwhelm response, and it's just starting to, you know, this long COVID syndrome, which basically to us is what we call post-viral syndrome, and we've been seeing it for, you know, over a decade in our clinics. this is going to become more common, but it is just, it's not specifically because of COVID. It could have been any major infection or just one other trauma. It is literally the straw that broke the camel's back, because this picture was playing out first. So I would kind of think that it would possibly not just be the pandemic that is actually what changes HR and how HR managers are supported. It would actually be things like long COVID, because we don't know yet the ramifications that that's going to have on workplace productivity. Because I know that people in my clinic who have had, you know, ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, that is a game changer in how no quality of life. I mean, just, I used to work and now I can't. So I think in the next year or so, we're going to start to see how long COVID is playing out.
100%. And I think what I'm particularly seeing at the moment, so we've gone through kind of last year, and the kind of a lot of fear came through last year because it was all new. We didn't know what we were dealing with. And I know some people on the call have seen the Kubler-Ross grief cycle, and you know, we've kind of changed it now, so it's a change cycle, and we go through those responses when we are dealing with that amount of change. And I think that now what we're starting to see is people are really down. They're frustrated, they're fed up. Yes, there's still the stress that we're talking about, but you know, definitely what we're seeing in our organization is that people are tired. They've gone through this whole year of having to deal with so much change, and so much has gone on, and they've been terrified in a lot of circumstances. You know, people have lost people, you know, dealing with grief on a massive scale. And like Claire said, I think we're just seeing the beginning of the stuff that is going to start coming through. And I think it's going to be a big challenge for us. I do.
So what useful tips? What can we do? That's the doom and gloom. This is the state of the world.
I think there's two ways that we can look at this. Let's look at what we can offer staff members, the kind of things, the kind of couple of the basics that we can offer staff members. And then I think it's interesting to talk about the support for HR managers and directors, and maybe going into that boundaries topic that you talked about, Emily, a little bit more, because I think it's a really interesting one. So from a staff perspective, I mean, there's some really simple things that you can implement. And it's an interesting one because I don't know if this could come from HR. I think HR might benefit from getting external health suppliers to come in to talk about this, because it's, you know, trying to get staff members to drink water. I don't know if that is something that can come from the HR.
Yeah.
I mean, drinking water, being hydrated is your body needs to be hydrated to be able to function. Your brain needs water. So ensuring that we're drinking 2 litres of water a day is a good starter for 10. I mentioned earlier that exercising at the right end of the day. So if we are going to do any kind of strenuous cardio exercise, we want to do it more at the beginning of the day when our cortisol levels are highest, rather than after work when we're exhausted and we need to be relaxing. So you kind of want to be doing your nice relaxing yoga, maybe go for a swim when the swimming pool's open at the end of the day. So exercise can be another one.
And I think actually we can be encouraging this within kind of our cultures. So, you know, in terms of looking at our times of work, I know that, you know, a lot of people are still working at home at the moment, and they've really enjoyed the flexibility that's come with that. So, you know, take the exercise, for example, you know, prior to kind of working at home most of the time, I would always do my exercise in the evening, because otherwise I'd have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do exercise. And that's just crazy. So what I was doing is I was working for 10 hours a day. Then I would go to CrossFit in the evening and absolutely destroy myself at CrossFit, and then wonder why I was putting on weight, wonder why I was exhausted all the time. So again, we have the power here to really influence our cultures to make sure that people are getting this time to be able to do the exercise at the start of their day, to make sure that, you know, when we're looking at providing, you know, drinks and stuff in our offices, yes, okay, have the coffee machine, but have the water on free supply. You know, don't encourage kind of loads of drinking after work. And I mean, I know that culture isn't as it used to be, but you know, when we're thinking about doing sort of team bonding events and stuff like that, you know, what are we encouraging people to do? Because actually all of this stuff comes from the top. People are looking to us for guidance. So we can't be saying on one hand, you know, let's have wellbeing days and let's do this wellbeing, but actually for our work event this year, we're all going to go and get completely off our face at the Christmas party. I mean, it just doesn't tally. And you know, when people have birthdays in the office, let's stop bringing in the crappy sugary cakes and stuff like that, because again, we're just encouraging, and it's a mixed message that we're sending out to people. So actually, you know, we've got a lot of power here to really influence how this works.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that. I went and visited an amazing company a couple of years ago now, like incredible. This guy, the way he runs his business was incredible. They actually had like a mock-up of a fuselage of a plane, where it went in and it was like silent, like you were on a plane, and there were even like images of the sky flashing past, because this is where you do your blue sky thinking if you want to get away from everybody. It was incredible. And they actually have like they had a big wheel, and when it was your birthday you could spin the wheel, and it was something like up to 50 quid, and everyone sort of like pitched in sort of like 50p or whatever, and then the business made up the rest. Whatever it's the wheel spun to is what your designated charity got. So instead of bringing in cakes, because they'd identified this, hang on a minute, we're not promoting wellbeing, they were like, well, let's do a spin the wheel of fortune, and everyone had a nominated charity. And so it was something that everyone got involved in, and it was really cute and really fun, and just stopped that whole culture of let's just all eat donuts sitting at a desk. Which I really liked. I get so excited about this because you're right, there is a couple of parts here. So supporting the staff, absolutely, and I think you're right, Laura, outside suppliers, because it can't come from HR. How do we support HR? And we'll talk about that next. But then how can HR really start banging the drum of this wellness has to be, and even taking the words out of it, people's physical health and mental well-being has to be part of the core values of the business and KPIs. And if, you know, it's not about people go out drinking, we're not going to employ them, but if this becomes a regular pattern, then this is something that we can actually start saying, hang on a minute, you are not taking care of your health and well-being, you are coming in late repeatedly, your productivity is lower, we're not okay with that. I think that takes real courage. I think it takes real courage to start making those front and center. It's like, if you're going to be the mums, then be the mums.
And this is where it has to start with the HR team. I mean, we know this from our clinical practice. We had to walk our talk. So when we have people who are coming in and we're making dietary recommendations, or we're asking people to drink water or exercise in the right way, we had to be doing it ourselves. Otherwise, we couldn't be coherent with it. So let's move on to talking about how we support HR managers and directors to look after their own well-being, mental and physical, so that they're able to bang that drum, as you say.
So firstly, I think I really want to start with the emotional, because that's the bit that I've been hearing the most. And very often, and particularly in this last year, I know some HR managers and directors who have been so busy and overwhelmed that even the thought of, you know, grabbing a bottle of water isn't, you know, possible in the middle of the day because I'm so snowed under. That also is a projection, and we can change that. We can. And I believe that entirely. You know, we can get up and get ourselves a glass of water. But I think the first place to start is with the emotional aspect. And this, I alluded to it earlier, and I really don't want to sound patronizing, because I don't mean it in this way at all, but it's about becoming the adult in the room. And the problem is, most of us don't, I'm saying this as a very generalized statement, but I'm saying it having, you know, worked with thousands of people and taught so many hundreds of students. Most people, my experience is that most people don't feel like grown up most of the time. We don't feel like, we're always looking outside of us for someone to tell us it's okay, for someone, and we kind of think, if I get older, by the time I have my own kids, or when I'm a director, I'll feel like, and my experience is people still sitting there going, What do I do? What do I do? I've seen it play out so many times, like the CEOs that we've got in clinic, and they're all sat there going, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And this is actually part of, without going into too much depth, it's actually part of the way in society that we tend to be brought up. It's like we go from children and then through our teens, it's like we have a few tantrums and slam doors, and then we're taught how to behave more appropriately in society, but we're never really taught how to become fully autonomous adults making decisions for ourselves. There's always this looking outside of ourselves because we had to do it with our parents, we had to do it at school, we have to do it in work, we have to do it in all these places. And there was many years ago now, this comes into a form of counselling, which I'm not suggesting you have to go and train in by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a very interesting model, which is around self-parenting, that we're never taught this process of self-parenting, of how to become this autonomous adult who goes, okay, there's a storm, that's okay. We're just going to learn how to ride it out. We're not going to get into a panic. We're going to learn how to navigate it. And so this is actually training that we do. So it's called self-parenting. It's something that we actually offer people, is this way of learning how to deal with your own anxiety first, put on your own oxygen mask first, learn how to deal with your own sabotaging thoughts, that monkey in your brain going, oh my gosh, but you're not good enough, and who are you to say that, and and all the things, and I better not say that to my boss, and all of those things. When we learn how to navigate those, now we can actually be the adult in the room that all of the staff members are turning to look to.
Yes. And I think what I really notice when we have people come to us as HR, they very much often, they want you to take their problem from them. So they'll come to you and they'll go, Emily, I'm really stressed. Here you go, you have it. And this was something that I really struggled with for many, many years working in HR. And I genuinely believe that this is part of the reason that actually led me to burnout. Because a few years ago I burnt out. My anxiety, everything was so bad that I couldn't do my job because I hadn't learned these skills to be able to push back on people and to recognize that, we're all adults in a business. We're all over the age of 18. So actually, it's not my responsibility to take on your stuff. So learning those skills around boundaries was the most important thing that I could have learned beyond all the other stuff, was for me to go, actually, great, brilliant that you can come talk to me. Let's talk about what you are going to do to help and support yourself, because I can give you the tools, but it's not my job to do the work for you. And again, this comes back to the whole cultural piece that HR have such a key part in, is really changing our businesses from this parental structure where you've got all your staff running around looking at mum and dad at the top. And that's not our job. We are all adults here, all responsible for delivering our own stuff in our own way. But we have to change the culture so that's how it is, and that you're not running to mum in HR and dad the director over here and playing each other off against each other when you don't get your own way. So for me, that was an absolutely critical thing to learn, was boundaries.
Yes. And then aren't you then teaching other people boundaries? And so then when you have got this, okay, I can hold this off, I can deal with my stuff, I'm not getting pulled into it. Now you can actually teach other people how to do it. That becomes staff training. That's where all that helps, right?
100%. And kind of that point you made about dealing with your own stuff as well. Again, like over the years, I've seen so many HR people projecting their stuff onto people that are coming to them. So again, it's so important that we are working on ourselves harder than the other work that we're doing. Because if we're coming in with all of our issues and all of our stuff that's going on, and somebody comes to us with a similar thing, it's going to trigger us. And we talk about trigger and that it's, this woo-woo millennial kind of phrase, but we have to recognize that in these jobs that we're doing, people are going to come to us with stuff that is going to trigger our stuff. So we have to work on ourselves.
I love it. I love it.
an absolute giveaway for not having boundaries is that overwhelm feeling.
Yeah.
So when we're in that, oh my God, I've got too much work to do, I can't be doing all of this, and I've got so many people who need stuff from me, that is such a flag to, okay, where are your boundaries?
Yeah. I would say I was overwhelmed for probably 15 years of my HR career, every single day, taking on everyone's stuff. And I couldn't say no, because I thought that that was my job, was to take on all that stuff all the time. And actually, again, what I've really learned is that when you stop doing that, you're working on your stuff, you're putting boundaries in place. Actually, the quality of your work and what you're then able to add value is so much more, because you're actually able to influence change and influence, you know, things that people do, because you've got the headspace to deal with it. When you're in that place of overwhelm, there's absolutely no way that you can think clearly to be able to support other people with their stuff. Just no way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know, we did a live, was it last night? Like, I have this, I'm so excited by the possibility for people getting out there and becoming wellness coaches now. Like, the world needs wellness coaches. And I've always felt that HR are the corporate, like those wellness coaches. Like, that's the possibility in HR, but it's just being corporatized, and corporate, I can't even think of the word, you know, become more and more and more corporate and depersonalized over the years, and all about contract negotiation and all about these things. And it's not, it is about the people.
100%.
So you are the frontline coaches, but absolutely, you're right, it has to come from you. It has to.
I think one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, and one of the things that has, again, been a massive game changer for me, is having a mentor that I can go to offload some of my stuff. And, you know, we're not therapists, and I'm not claiming to be a therapist in any way, shape or form, but a lot of my work and a lot of the work that we do in HR, we're talking to people about heavy stuff. And if we've then got nowhere to go with that, because quite often, you know, it's very confidential, the stuff that we're being spoken to about, we can't go and talk to other people about it. You know, if we've maybe got a bigger HR team, that might afford us that opportunity to do so. But, you know, my role is standalone. I have no one to go talk to about stuff. And if I've had a particularly stressful day, or, you know, somebody's come to me with something that's really triggered my stuff, I need somewhere to go to. So again, one of the things that I valued so much is that I work with Laura, and I go, Laura, can we have a supervision session, please? And I will have a call with Laura, and I'll just talk about the stuff that is going on. And, you know, it's not that Laura's sat there giving me advice, it's she's holding the space for me, because I spend all my day holding space for other people. So again, HR people, it's not something that we're taught to do. We're not therapists, so, you know, therapists have to have supervision. But I would absolutely recommend that to anyone that is in HR, because it just really helps stop that overwhelm as well.
Doesn't it just? It is absolutely essential. It's not mandatory in all therapies, and that's something that I really want to see change in the future, because you're absolutely right. It's my experience of supervision and having mentoring is, it's someone to hold me up to the standards that I want to set myself on the boundaries that I want to have. So it's someone who says, did you want to say that with that boundary? And I go, oh, can I? And they go, yeah. And I go, does that sound okay? And they go, yeah. And it's someone to help you even find the words for that feels, you know, great, and is not going to be conflicting. And that's what supervision can actually give you. Because even we've managed to make supervision sound like, well, yes, with this person I would do this. It's like, no, it's about how I'm going to deal with this, how I'm going to do that, and the issues, the fears that I've got about saying that one thing to my boss or that member of staff or whatever it is. Absolutely, it's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
It's also, when we're in a situation, we often can't see the wood for the trees. So supervision or a mentor is someone external from that situation, external from the company maybe, who is able to give you a different viewpoint and a different perspective, so that you're able to have this awareness of, okay, this is the situation, this is what I'm having to deal with. And when we have awareness, then we have the opportunity to make change. Because when we're coming from that place of not being able to see what's going on, then we can't make any change.
Yeah.
Because when you're in those trenches, you cannot see, and the more, again, it's that cumulative effect, isn't it, of the more you take on, the more's coming at you. You just cannot think, and you cannot see straight. So yeah, so important.
Amazing. So this is how we change the world, right?
We're going to change the world.
Change the world. I swear.
Well, it amazes me listening to what HR have got to deal with, that you don't have the support and the training that is needed to be able to, like, if you are at the heart of people coming to you with all of this stuff, it amazes me that you don't have that support around you.
We don't, and we've been told for years that, you know, we need to stop being, you know, the periods and Tampax people. You know, that's the tissues and Tampax people. That's what we were known as. And there was this big move to move personnel, as it was, to HR, and we would become these big strategic, you know, it's very masculine. Let's move away from talking to people to sitting in board meetings and coming up with strategies. But that's not what people need. You know, organizations are built of their people, and people need people. So yeah, I think now is the time.
It's the wake-up call. Yeah. So Claire and I, in our business, we offer lots of different things to be able to support HR managers with this. We have stress talks that we can give to staff. We have stress programs that we offer to staff. We also do the mentoring and the supervision support for HR staff who need that download or someone to go to if they're dealing with stress themselves.
Mm-hmm. And
so,
we also do the training on the emotional training of how to work with your own anxiety, how to do your own self-parenting, how to become that, so you just stop being the rabbit in the headlights. So we do that training too. So we have online programs, and we also have in-person programs. And so we offer all of those as well as the physical stuff for staff and HR managers.
Yeah, and what I would say is I've done the online Reclaim Your Life program. For such a small investment of money, it is honestly the best thing that you will do. So I did it during kind of the first lockdown. And then I went on to do the holding space practitioner training that Claire and Laura have briefly spoken about as well. Again, completely essential training to be able to do my job. So I would highly recommend those.
If you go to balancedwellness.co.uk, we actually have all of the talks that we do and links to all the training, and Reclaim Your Life is on there. But there is also a workplace wellness page where we talk about all the offerings that we have, including talks to staff, how we support HR managers, and the offering. Because we genuinely believe we've always had a workplace offering, because we absolutely see how huge the workplace is in terms of people's health and well-being. And now what's coming out has just absolutely, you know, shown us how HR are the frontline coaches to make sure that as we move forward, the world gets better and not worse.
Great.
Amazing.
So yeah, thanks everyone for coming along today. And yeah, thanks Claire and Laura.
Thank you for having us. It's been
really good fun.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.